Nintendo has pioneered some unique controllers over its long history, and back in the 90s experimented with mouse controls on the Super Nintendo, most notably with Mario Paint, but also recently implemented mouse support on the Switch 2 Joy-Cons. But this wasn't Nintendo's only use of mouse pointer technology. In the summer of 2007, released exclusively in Japan, Nintendo published Adventure MagKid on the Nintendo DS, a dual-screen game that made use of an exclusive mouse accessory that attached to the Slot 2 port on the bottom of the handheld. This game was developed by the same team that created the fun and creative Clubhouse games on DS. If you never played Clubhouse games, definitely give it a shot. This unique accessory has a broken U or sort of bent paperclip shape. It's slightly off-white in color and has the eye of the mouse laser on the bottom. It's a weird-looking doohickey for sure, and if you don't know what you're looking at, it could easily be mistaken for something that should be thrown in the garbage. It attaches to the bottom of the DS just like inserting any Game Boy Advance cartridge. Once connected, it props the DS at a comfortable viewing angle and reminds me of the Kid Icarus 3DS plastic stand. Resting the DS on a desk or a flat surface is required, so this isn't exactly the best game to take on a long road trip. Because there's no good way to capture direct footage, I'm going to do my best to record this video while using a cutting board as my flat surface, so try and stay with me. So what exactly is MagKid, why does it use mouse control, and how does it play? Well, there's an electrical storm and the refrigerator magnets attached to the fridge, along with the drawings they were holding, came to life with the lightning strike. So you play as the plain gray magnet, while the other ones turned evil as they try and get in your way. Instead of using the D-pad or the touchscreen, the player slides the entire DS to move the little magnet. And the first thing I'll say is how surprisingly accurate this control is. I don't know, I guess maybe I was expecting some weird delay or lag or something, but no. The game picks up the slightest movement at the speed in which you move. I'm not sure on the DPI level, but it's just as accurate as any gaming mouse you might be using today. It's highly responsive, and I still can't believe how accurate it controls even after spending hours playing this game. And if that wasn't enough, this slide attachment has a built-in rumble motor. So when you bump into objects or the border of the screen, you feel a solid jolt. In fact, I think the rumble feature here feels better than the original DS Rumble Pack. It's hard to explain, but it just provides a more responsive zap according to what's happening on screen, plus it's significantly quieter. Also, if you want to learn about DS Rumble Packs, I made a whole video series on it and even compared them. Links in the description. Okay, so the play control is accurate, but how is the actual game? Well, I wouldn't exactly call it terrible, but it also isn't great. The entire game is in Japanese, but I was able to figure things out with time, trial, and error. There are 3 main gameplay modes and all are accessible from the main hub screen. So yeah, you need to even slide around the main menu instead of simply choosing something from a list of options using the D-pad and face buttons. First is essentially the story mode where you need to put a severed robot back together. Because you're a magnet, you need to find the limbs of the robot, then drag them back to the robot corpse and reattach the limbs Frankenstein style. To do this, the player needs to understand the travel mechanic. Because the game wants to imitate navigating a house, MagKid gets moved to a new room when he enters a container. So if you slide into an eyeglass case, a book, a portfolio, or a bag, for example, it gives the impression that a life-size human family member picks up that container with you in it and drops you off somewhere else in the house. Then you wander around until all the pieces are found before moving on to the next stage. In summary, it's one giant fetch quest. The other main mode of play comes from the sketchbook. Here, instead of putting a robot back together, the player needs to find and chain a specific set of enemies together. Sort of like Kirby meets that classic Snake game. You know, the one where you get a little bit longer with each piece you eat. This mode gets tricky though because you have to put yourself together in a specific sequence. The timer aspect gets annoying, brutally unfair at times, because navigating with this room-to-room travel feature is tedious at best. Since the camera is zoomed in closely, it's difficult to see your surroundings, where you need to go, the enemies, and the lack of a detailed map makes playing each stage an annoying session of trial and error. The thing is, you need to ram into enemies to stun them, then touch them again to add them to your chain. Then, depending on the enemy, you can use their power, like Kirby or Mega Man, to potentially stun a different kind of enemy with one long rock, paper, scissors weakness chain. While this sounds reasonable at first, it gets really tedious. The problem is, you can't drop connected enemies at will. The only way to reset your collected chain is to intentionally take a hit and try recollecting everything in the proper order. It's horrible design and never fun, so you need to navigate a large area from a zoomed-in perspective, find the right enemy to attack, hope it's the weakness to the other enemy you need to attach, but you might need to take a hit and detach first, try and reattach everything in the right order as enemies scatter, all within a strict time limit. The later stages are actually really tough and stressful. The difficulty spikes are not fun. Also, it doesn't take long to realize the environments repeat. Instead of venturing through new areas, you instead just go further into the house as a new container will become available. It's basically just an easy way to reuse assets from an already plain-looking game. There are also boss battles, but they're not great and require more trial and error. There's a gimmick usually to defeat them. By playing through the main game and finding some secrets, a few mini-games can be unlocked. For example, there's this one card-finding minigame where you need to move onto the card shown. The fishing and bug-catching games are basically the same thing where you need to move a net to trap the moving critters. There's also this obstacle course minigame where you need to reach the end before time expires. But it's difficult because you have to continuously move the DS back to the bottom of your surface as you constantly need to slide upward. I guess they're decent distractions, high scores are saved, but there isn't a need to really play them more than a couple of times. There is, however, wireless multiplayer support for up to 4 players. But I'm obviously unable to test these multiplayer modes because each player needs that special mouse attachment. So if anyone wants to organize a meetup at a game convention somewhere and test this feature, leave a note in the comments. Slide Adventure MagKid isn't exactly the most polished game. If I were to give it a score, I'd give it a 5, maybe a 6 out of 10 if the multiplayer mode was cool. It's brutally unfair at times, and the simple, much too zoomed in visual presentation doesn't exactly do it any favors. But leave it to Nintendo to gamify mouse controls to help create such a crazy, stupidly unnecessary attachment for their dual-screened handheld. Even if it is only compatible with this one game and it isn't the best, the accessory itself, with its accurate controls and rumble feature, is well designed. I still think the Taito DS paddle controller remains the best DS accessory of all time, but also maybe sort of on par with, say, the Guitar Hero DS grip controller. At the same time, if you play DS sitting at a desk, I would just want to use this as a stand because it sits at the perfect angle even though it isn't adjustable. Sure, I wish the game was more fun. It would have been cool if more games used this forgotten attachment, but Slide Adventure MagKid should be remembered for trying something so bold and unique in an era when games could still afford to take chances. It's unlikely we'll see something like this ever again. MagKid isn't entirely forgotten though. Spirit number 1226 in Smash Bros. Ultimate is the MagKid spirit where you need to fight a gray Kirby who does his best impression of this neglected character. Just like the DS game, hostile assistants appear and can cause damage if they dash into you. It's actually a really creative fight once you spend time with this DS original. Sakurai thought of everything as you even fight this battle on the DS stage. But what do you think? Did you know about MagKid's quirky slide adventure? Would you like to see a port or a sequel using the Switch 2's mouse controls? And what lousy artwork is currently hanging on your refrigerator right now? Let me know in the comments. And for tons of obscure, forgotten, and neglected gaming content like this, see the links to my playlist in the description. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and joining my Patreon. Thanks goes to my current Patreon supporters, and special thanks to supporter Chris who sent me this copy of MagKid all the way from Japan. This video would not have been possible without this support. Until next time, thank you for watching, and game on!